You have to be excited about the future. Life cannot just be about solving one problem after another. There have to be things that really move your heart and that make you excited to wake up in the morning.
I mean, my mind is a storm, and I don't think most people would want to be me. They may think they would want to be me, but they don't know. They don't understand. A source of strength. I just really not how I think about things. I mean, for me, it's simply this is something that is important to get done, and we should just keep doing it or die trying. And I don't need a source of strength.
So quitting is not even like...
It's not in my nature. And I don't care about optimism or pessimism. Fuck that, we're going to get it done. Try to be useful. Do things that are useful to your fellow human beings, to the world. It's very hard to be useful. Very hard. Are you contributing more than you consume? Like try to have a positive net contribution to society. I think that's the thing to aim for. Not to try to be sort of a leader for the sake of being a leader or whatever. A lot of times, the people you want as leaders are the people who don't want to be leaders. Try to find something where there's an overlap of your talents and what you're interested in. So people may be good at something, or they may have skill at a particular thing, but they don't like doing it. So you want to try to find a thing where that's a good combination of the things that you're inherently good at, but you also like doing. I put a lot of stock and certainly have a lot of respect for someone who puts in an honest day's work to do useful things. And just generally to have not a zero-sum mindset or have more of a grow the pie mindset. If you sort of say when we see people perhaps including some very smart people kind of taking an attitude of like doing things that seem like morally questionable, it's often because they have at a base sort of axiomatic level a zero-sum mindset without realizing it. They don't realize they have a zero-sum mindset, or at least they don't realize it consciously. You really want to make sure you're not operating without realizing it from a zero-sum mindset, where the only way to get ahead is to take things from others. Then that's going to result in you trying to take things from others, which is not good. It's much better to work on adding to the economic pie. Creating, like I said, creating more than you consume, doing more than you, So that's a big deal. If you can live a useful life, that is a good life, a life worth having lived. And like I said, I would encourage people to use the mental tools of physics and apply them broadly in life. They're the best tools. My workload went up from about, 70 to 8 hours a week to probably 120. Yeah. I go to sleep, I wake up, I work, go to sleep, wake up, work, do that 7 days a week. I'll have to do that for a while, no choice. But I think once Twitter is set on the right path, I think it is a much easier thing to manage than SpaceX or Tesla. I think there's degrees of love. But certainly for one to feel fully happy, I think you have to be happy in work and happy in love. So I suppose I'm medium happy. There are degrees of happiness.
Can love for projects, for work, compensate love among people?
I think love of work, in my experience, can at best make one halfway happy.
Perhaps that's your biggest hope, to be really in love.
I have been in the past. I try to be as literal as possible. I would be happy if humanity has a self-sustaining city on Mars. But I'd encourage people to read a lot of books. Basically, try to ingest as much information as you can, and try to also just develop a good general knowledge. So you at least have a rough lay of the land of the knowledge landscape. Try to learn a little bit about a lot of things, because you might not know what you're really interested in. How would you know what you're really interested in if you at least aren't doing a peripheral exploration broadly of the knowledge landscape, and talk to people from different walks of life and different industries and professions and skills and occupations. Just try to learn as much as possible. I don't consider going to college evidence of exceptional ability. In fact, ideally you dropped out and did something. I mean, obviously, Gates is a pretty smart guy, he dropped out. Jobs is pretty smart, he dropped out. Larry Ellison, smart guy, he dropped out. Obviously not needed.
Generally, you want education to be as close to a video game as possible, like a good video game. You do not need to tell your kid to play video games. They will play video games on autopilot all day. So if you can make it interactive and engaging, then you can make education far more compelling and far easier to do.
You don't need college to learn stuff, okay? Everything is available basically for free. You can learn anything you want for free. It is not a question of learning. There is a value that colleges have, which is like, seeing whether can somebody work hard at something, including a bunch of sort of annoying homework assignments, and still do their homework assignments, and kind of soldier through and get it done. That's like the main value of college. And then also, if you probably want to hang around with a bunch of people your own age for a while instead of going right into the workforce. So I think colleges are basically for fun and to prove you can do your chores, but they're not for learning.
I think a business degree teaches you a lot of the terminology. It introduces you to concepts that you would otherwise, there's terminology, there's something to be said for that. It introduces you to concepts you would otherwise have to learn empirically. I think you can learn whatever you need to do to start a successful business, either in school or out of school. School, in theory, should help accelerate that process, and I think it oftentimes it does. It can be an efficient learning process, perhaps more efficient than empirically learning lessons. There are examples of successful entrepreneurs who never graduated high school, and there are those that have PhDs. So I think the important principle is to be dedicated to learning what you need to know, whether that is in school or empirically. Generally, you want education to be like as close to a video game as possible, like a good video game. Like, you do not need to tell your kid to play video games. They will play video games on autopilot all day. So if you can make it interactive and engaging, then you can make education far more compelling and far easier to do. A university education is often unnecessary. That's not to say it's unnecessary for all people, but I think you probably learn about as much, or the vast majority of what you're going to learn there in the first 2 years, and most of it is from your classmates. Now for a lot of companies, they do want to see the completion of the degree, because they're looking for someone who's going to persevere and see it through to the end, and that's actually what's important to them. So it really depends on what somebody's goal is. If the goal is to start a company, I would say no point in finishing college. So I think that's how it should be, and it shouldn't be that you've got like these grades where people move in lockstep, and so everyone goes like normally English, math, science, and so forth from like 5th grade to 6th grade to 7th grade, like it's an assembly line. But people are not objects on an assembly line. That's a ridiculous notion.
So the way education works today is really much like, it's like vaudeville. Before there was radio and TV and movies, you had vaudeville, where every town would have their town play, the town troupe, the sort of acting troupe. And that would be the entertainment. In a big city, you'd have much better players than, say, in a small city. But then along came movies and TV, and then you say and video games, where you take the smartest, best people in any arena, like whether they're acting, writing, directing, special effects. You spend tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars creating a great movie or a great video game, and you make it as compelling as possible. Now that crushes vaudeville, crushes. Imagine you're not in New York, imagine you're in Bakersfield, okay? Then you got, instead of Batman being like the Nolan brothers, it's Batman the Bakersfield acting troupe. It wouldn't be as good. That's how teaching works today. What you actually want to have is an interactive learning experience that is as compelling as possible, and you do not actually want a teacher in front of a board doing a vaudeville act. You want it to be engaged, real-time feedback. You have to establish relevance, otherwise your mind will want to forget things. So our mind is constantly trying to forget as much as possible. So you'll only remember things if your mind can establish relevance, or there's a strong emotional element to it. Otherwise, you're basically going to forget everything. Memory is very expensive from an evolutionary standpoint, so it's trying to forget as much as possible. So when teaching a course, you have to explain to kids why it's important. And then you want to teach to the problem instead of teaching the tools. So what I mean by that is, if you said, here's a car engine. We're gonna try to understand how this car engine works. We're gonna take it apart. So what do we need to do to take it apart? We need a wrench, we need some screwdrivers, we need a hoist and a pulley, and we're gonna take it apart and we're gonna see how it all works. That's engaging. And along the way, you learn about wrenches and screwdrivers and all the tools that are needed. That actually is engaging and compelling. But the way teaching more typically works is, we're gonna teach you a course on screwdrivers and a course on wrenches. And you're like, why do I have a course on wrenches? It's not obvious. That would be like, say, a course on calculus without explaining what calculus is used for. So once you have access to the internet, you have access to all the world's information. But if you don't have access to the internet, or it's too expensive or low bandwidth, then you cannot access the MIT lessons, you can't access all the information, and you can't sell the goods and services that you produce. So internet connectivity, I think it might be certainly a candidate for one of the things that would do more to lift people out of poverty than anything else, because they can now sell their goods and services, they can learn anything, but without connectivity they cannot.
Everyone's wrong, no matter who you are, everyone's wrong some of the time. The most common error of a smart engineer is to optimize a thing that should not exist. Why would people do that? Well, everyone's been trained in high school and college that you got to answer the questions, convergent logic. So you can't tell a professor your question is dumb, and you'll get a bad grade. You have to answer the question. So everyone's basically, without knowing it, they got like mental straitjacket on. They'll work on optimizing the thing that should simply not exist. Just make your requirements less dumb. Your requirements are definitely dumb. It does not matter who gave them to you. It's particularly dangerous if a smart person gave you the requirements, because you might not question them enough. No matter who you are, everyone's wrong some of the time. Then try very hard to delete the part or process. This is actually very important. If you're not occasionally adding things back in, you are not deleting enough. The bias tends to be very strongly towards, let's add this part or process step in case we need it. But you can basically make in-case arguments for so many things. Only the third step is simplify or optimize. The third step, not the first step. Finally, you get to step 4, which is accelerate cycle time. If you're moving too slowly, go faster. But don't go faster until you have worked on the other 3 things first. And then the final step is automate. Now, I have personally made the mistake of going backwards on all 5 steps multiple times. I automated, accelerated, simplified, and then deleted.
As far as idea generation, I tend to think of things from a sort of physics standpoint, like from a first principle standpoint, what would be the best way to accomplish something, and then pursue that. So, and that's also a good way to determine if something's far from its optimum. And like on rockets, for example, one could say, you could reason by analogy and say the rocket's going to cost a certain amount because that's what prior rockets have cost. Or you can say, well, what is a rocket made of? What are the material constituents? What do they weigh? What's the cost per unit mass? And that sets the limit asymptotically for what a rocket can be. So if you can figure out some creative way to rearrange those elements into a rocket shape, then you can achieve a much better outcome. That's the first principles approach. And I think also just combining ideas from different industries is really helpful for innovation. So what have people discovered in one industry, and can that be applied to other industries? That's, I think, also a great source of ideas. But you usually just struggle on a solution, and you try a bunch of things. Some of them don't work, and most of them don't work, and occasionally one does.
Wishful thinking for sure is a source of many problems in many walks of life. Business or personal, wishful thinking causes a lot of trouble. You really have to ask whether something is true or not. Does it make sense? And if it ever feels like too easy, it probably is. Well, there's a ton of failures along the way, that's for sure. Like so, as I said, for SpaceX, the first 3 launches failed, and we're just barely able to scrape together enough parts and money to do the 4th launch. If that 4th launch had failed, we would have been dead. So multiple failures along the way. I tried very hard to get the right expertise in for SpaceX. I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones, well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures.
Oh, we shouldn't have some greedy corporation do it, we should have the government do it. I'm like, actually, the government is just a corporation in the limit. So a government is the corporation with a monopoly on violence. So if you're unhappy with a commercial corporation doing it, you should be actually very unhappy with the government doing it, since it is simply a corporation, the most corporate thing. And you can actually easily get more sway in a company than you can, the outcome of a company, than you can in the government. Everyone's experienced this going to the DMV. Every said, do you want the DMV at scale? Probably not, okay? I think we do need to have a merit-based system, because as soon as you go down the path of you're going to discriminate on non-merit-based, then where do you stop? Yeah, I think we need to be as rigorous about merit as possible. And while it is, to me that seems like it's a foundational thing. Again, I also think this room is probably supportive of a merit-based situation. But yeah, that is, I think we should be, not discriminate on anything other than merit.
I think it's also important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because it's like something else that was done.
Impossible is a strong word.
You don't like that word.
Well, it's a strong word. I sort of approach things from a physics standpoint, and the word impossible is, more or less banned in physics. Never trust a cynic. The reason is that cynics excuse their own bad behavior by saying everyone does it because they're cynical. So it's a red flag if someone's a cynic, a true cynic. I mean, my motivation, if I've got a religion of any kind, is a religion of curiosity, of trying to understand, it's really the mission of Grok, understand the universe. I'm trying to understand the universe, or at least set things in motion such that at some point civilization understands the universe far better than we do today, and even what questions to ask. As Douglas Adams pointed out in his book, sometimes the answer is arguably the easy part. Trying to frame the question correctly is the hard part. Once you frame the question correctly, the answer is often easy. So I'm trying to set things in motion such that we are at least at some point able to understand the universe. People generally think of themselves relative to others. We are constantly rebaselining our expectations. Time is the true currency.
Yeah.
So it is tough to say what is the best allocation of time. I mean, there are, often say, if you look at, say, Tesla, Tesla this year will do over $100 billion in revenue. So that's $2 billion a week. If I make slightly better decisions, I can affect the outcome by $1 billion. So then, I try to do the best decisions I can. And on balance, at least compared to the competition, pretty good decisions. But the marginal value of better decision can easily be, in the course of an hour, $100 million. Well, I think you have to look at it on a percentage basis, because if you look at it in absolute terms, it's just, I would never get any sleep. It would just be like, I need to just keep working and work my brain harder, And I'm not trying to get as much as possible out of this meat computer. So it's pretty hard, because you can just work all the time, and at any given point, like I said, a slightly better decision could be $100 million impact for Tesla or SpaceX, for that matter. But it is wild when considering the marginal value of time can be $100 million an hour at times.
I didn't put all this effort into building SpaceX and Tesla because I thought they were easy ways to make money. I mean, anyone who starts a car company thinking it's an easy way to make money is a fool. There are only 2 car companies that have not gone bankrupt in the history of the United States, and that's Ford and Tesla. And Tesla came within inches of going bankrupt multiple times, as did SpaceX.
You're one of, if not the most famous, wealthy, and powerful people in the world. In your position, it's difficult to find people you can trust.
Trust no one, not even yourself, not trusting yourself. I mean, I guess you look at somebody's track record over time, and if they've
Data.
got I guess you kind of use your neural net to assess someone. And
neural nets don't feel pain. Your neural net has consciousness. It might feel pain when people betray you.
to be frank, I mean, I've almost never been betrayed. Very, very rare.
To summarize maybe the woke mind virus, it consists of creating very divisive identity politics. So it actually amplifies, mind virus in my view, amplifies racism, amplifies, frankly, sexism, and all the isms. And while claiming to do the opposite, it actually divides people and makes them sort of hate each other, and it makes people hate themselves. And it's also anti-meritocratic. It's not merit-based. So you want to have people succeed based on how hard they work and the talents, not who they are, whether they're man, woman, what race or gender, that stuff is all it's an artificial mental civil war that is created. And it's not, and let me tell you, it's no fun, okay? It is like woke mind virus and fun are incompatible. There's no fun in that. No joy. Woke mind virus is all about condemning people instead of celebrating people. Like when in the woke, it just doesn't celebrate. It's all about condemning and being divisive and being just, I think it's just evil, frankly.